what actually is a cryptocurrency?
In order to understand what cryptocurrency is, you kind of have to look at what it's based on, right? All of these projects are based on something called the blockchain. And without like diving into the technical side of it,
Hmm.
right? Like in order to get what the blockchain is, you have to kind of see what concept it's based on, which is something that like humans have been using for a very, very long time. It's bookkeeping. It's basically like, if you're a business owner, you want to know how much money you're spending on things, right? You want to know what your business account balance is. So in order to track all of that, you basically put it in a journal, and this is how much I spent today, and this is what my, after this financial transaction, this is what my account balance is, right? And you can
Yep.
use that, when it's time to pay taxes. You can use that for audits. You can use it for all kinds of things. So that's kind of what blockchain is under the underpinnings of blockchain is basically just a simple bookkeeping. We also call it ledger
Exactly.
in the business world. It's called the ledger, financial ledger. Now the problem with that is that it's if you look at this log, right, every entry depends on the entry in the previous entries in the book. So if you remove an
Exactly.
entry in the log, you basically it breaks the integrity of the entire log.
Yes.
So the actual account value is not right anymore. So you kind of have to you're basically it's done. You can throw it away. And so that's one issue with it. The other issue is that typically there's one or maybe like a team of people that's responsible for the integrity of the ledger, right? So if it's a company, it's usually a team of finance people, accountants or whatever that are basically they can tamper with the ledger.
Exactly.
I mean, realistically, how often does it happen? I mean, in some companies, we know some companies do that. They're usually in the news when that happens, and it's it's not good
Yeah.
news. Um, but it's so it's possible, and those are kind of the problems. The idea behind the ledger is very solid, but in order to implement it at mass scale, basically for something like what blockchain is, you have to fix these issues, and that's what a blockchain does. It basically takes this idea and tries to digitize it, um,
And make it more secure. And
make it more secure. Yeah, and it's basically so in the blockchain, you have transactions written into something called blocks.
yep.
This is versus like literally a piece of paper in the ledger, right? In the old
Yep.
ledger. And so once a block gets to a certain size, it gets added to the chain, the blockchain. And so now this is where the craziness happens, right? This is very technically difficult task. It requires a lot of energy, especially for Bitcoin. So what basically happens is, in order to create the block, it needs to get to a certain size of transactions. And so you have these people we call miners who are basically minting these blocks. So they're doing a lot of computationally intensive tasks to basically make this block ready to be added to the blockchain. When it's ready, it gets announced to something called the blockchain nodes. So Bitcoin or blockchain is, especially like a Bitcoin blockchain, is basically just a computer network, a computer network of like these interconnected nodes, basically.
And everything is
And
decentralized pretty much.
everything is decentralized because every node basically contains a copy of the blockchain on it. So when a
Yep.
miner basically says, "Oh, I got this block ready, let's go ahead and add it," every single block gets to verify whether the information that's in this new block is actually valid. And
Exactly.
not only that, once each block verifies that it is valid, it then tells other blocks about the, hey, there's a new block on the blockchain now, and that's how they basically share this information. And so this new block that gets this information can also do the same verification process. Now
So
if it, at
it's
any point it doesn't verify, that block is not going to get added, and the miner is not going to get paid for the work um, that they did, basically,
so
because it.
two quick
Yeah, go ahead.
questions. Is it safe to say that there would be no Bitcoin without the blockchain technology?
Absolutely, yeah. I think
And
it's
can
I
the
think it's
block
integral.
can the blockchain technology be used for something else besides cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, there's many uses for this type of technology. Like if you, a lot of there's been a lot of chatter about using this for voting,
Mm,
because once you put your transaction, or let's say your transaction could be a vote, right? It doesn't have to be a financial transaction, it could
yeah,
be a vote. Once you put that into a block, it takes an incredible amount of energy. Like for Bitcoin, it takes an incredible amount of energy to change that chain. Once
got it.
the block gets attached to a blockchain, and every block has basically like a pointer back to the previous block that
The
it was
previous one.
that's attached to, that linkage is takes an incredible amount of effort to break. It costs a lot of money because it costs a lot of energy to do that for a bunch of miners to break that link. That's
Now,
called the 51% attack in a blockchain.
now,
And so,
when you say mining,
mhm.
do I need to pick up an axe and a shovel and start mining Bitcoin somewhere? What is mining for Bitcoin or mining for cryptocurrency? What is that actually?
A mining, again, without diving into the
Yeah,
technical side, it's basically a cryptographic challenge. So it's something that your computer, so as a miner, you basically own these farms of, like
of servers
computers
and
connected
computers,
servers. Yeah, it's something that your computer is going to spend a lot of time spinning its wheels doing to basically come up with the correct response to this cryptographic challenge, basically.
which is like a math problem.
Exactly. It's just a very difficult math problem. Yeah. And for, as the blockchain grows, the complexity of this challenge increases. So it takes more time and more energy for miner to actually mine a block.
Now, what would be the benefit of mining? Like, why would I want to mine? Like, what would I get out of mining?
Well, it's so every miner is basically gets rewarded for the block that they mine. So
Okay.
they at one point it was actually very lucrative back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, like those years. It was you could mine Bitcoin on your computer. Like you basically, that's how a lot of they call them the whales, the Bitcoin whales. That's how they
Yeah.
got their Bitcoin, is they literally mined it on their computer. So you could mine it on a CPU. It was a very computationally inexpensive process. Then you had
Okay.
to get you couldn't do it on the CPU anymore. You have to get a graphics card and basically mine it on a graphics card. And now basically you have farms of giant these farms that basically mine Bitcoin, and they all get rewarded for it. So if you're operating in an area where electricity is cheap, which I guess a lot of places in China are like that because they own a lot of they own not a it's a pretty significant portion of all of the miners, but miners again are very equally distributed among different nations. But like anywhere where electricity is cheap, it could be like a pretty beneficial thing for you to be doing. Maybe this is, you can set up a little farm and basically start mining. The problem with that obviously is that you're essentially wasting a lot of energy. That's one of the kind of like the criticisms of something like a Bitcoin blockchain, is it wastes a lot of energy in order to process these blocks and attach them to the blockchain. So but yeah, it's I would say right now it's probably very difficult business to get into for a normal uh, Bitcoin investor, just because
Okay.
it takes an incredible amount of computing power to basically mine a block. But it is something that there's still companies that basically operate at scale, and some of them are like publicly trading companies now,
Gotcha.
and all they do is basically mine Bitcoin. That's their business. That's their core
So when they
business.
mine Bitcoin, they get rewarded in Bitcoin also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they
Now,
get rewarded in Bitcoin. Yeah.
I also heard that some countries and even some governments, like China, they
Hmm.
are mining Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies like crazy.
Yeah. China has always been like at the forefront of the the mining industry, and I don't. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that it's a very uh, there's a lot of issues with the Chinese government basically, and they have a lot of power, and basically they have the ability to take away your funds if they really wanted to. So a lot of people
Wow.
are kind of flocking to crypto, and that's kind of what started the whole miner trend in China, because it
Yep.
was just like it's a you can it's currency that no one essentially can take away from you unless they know you're basically, unless you give them the private key to your wallet. So yeah, so China's been at the forefront, but again, it's the 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 entire blockchain. Like I don't want to make this sound like, you know, they are the sole miners. That are not. The United States also has a lot of miners, and so basically, the if you look at the geographical locations of miners, basically they're pretty evenly distributed.
Okay.
The biggest countries are probably going to be like China, United States, Russia, you know,